So thank you very much for joining us here at the Rakuten booth. I think first of all to our guest speakers, Scott and Ayush, if you could just give a sort of brief introduction of yourselves, like who are Telna and eSIM CoPilot. Scott, if you'd like to go first, just give a bit of background.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. My name's Scott Mackenzie. I've been in the eSIM industry for over 10 years. From the very beginning, we were involved in launching the very first eSIM app that was released on the iOS App Store. So from the very start, I've understood this sector. And recently, we've created a business called eSIM CoPilot, which helps enterprises adopt eSIM technology and deliver it to their employees through Microsoft Teams. So you can check us out. We're over in Hall 7 on the GB stand.
Thank you very much. And Ayush, same question to you. A little bit of background would be good.
Pleasure. Hi, everyone. Ayush Mathur. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Telna. So we at Telna, we are an API-first eSIM connectivity enablement platform. We have about 30 mobile networks around the world that are leveraging our technology stack with a focus on digital apps, the eSIM MVNOs that you see today, as well as they help us enable what we call super apps.
Thank you very much, Ayush and Tarek, for the benefit of our non-Rakuten members of the audience. If you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello, everyone. This is Tarek Zeid. I'm the Senior Vice President of the International Business at Rakuten Mobile Japan. Rakuten Mobile Japan, the first mobile operator in Japan and the world's first end-to-end cloud-native network. I'm looking after the international business for the company. That's including the international roaming, international voice, and SMS as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So let's start the conversation by talking about the developments we've seen over the last year, let's say. As we all know, eSIM technology has been notoriously difficult to get off the ground, but that seems to be changing. What sort of changes have we seen over the last year that have made that possible, and what's the state of play now? Ayush, maybe you'd like to take that one.
Look, I think in the last year, we've seen quite a bit of adoption in the eSIM ecosystem. A big part is the education, right? So far, if you really see, it's only 1 in 5 people that still knows about an eSIM. And a big part of it has been the mobile network operators have not adopted it and have not pushed for it. You know, USA is a market that's a bit of an outlier, where people have really had to adopt eSIM given the Apple devices. But as we see more Android devices adopted, large regions, let that be South America, India, Africa, they're all getting more educated on what it is and the benefits of adopting that technology. I don't know what you think.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's becoming more mainstream as well because mainstream brands have started to offer eSIM services through their existing channels. So if you look at fintech, for example, Revolut obviously launched an eSIM service in the European market. And as a Revolut customer, you can get an eSIM through your Revolut subscription. And I think we're seeing that across quite a lot of different brands across the industry. So people are starting to understand a bit more about the technology and how it works. But like Ayush says, it's still very early days. And I think in the US, it's moved on a little bit because of the Apple device. But over the next perhaps 2 or 3 years, as we see more eSIM-enabled devices in Europe, I expect the knowledge of eSIM to grow and more adoption, really.
Same here from the MNO. From the I turned this off. Yeah, and from the MNO perspective, speaking as MNO, yeah, we see the landscape for international connectivity is completely changing. Right? Being in this industry for 20 years, it was always international roaming offering was always limited to MNOs in every country, right? And my competitors was always the MNOs in the same country. But now I never imagined that I live to the day that I found a supermarket selling international connectivity, right? So everyone is selling international connectivity now. The landscape is changing. It's not MNO to MNO offering right now at all anymore. It's not limited to MNOs. Everyone has the ability now to create their own roaming connectivity or international connectivity. And actually it became like essential service that many enterprises and companies are actually bundling it with the rest of the services that they're having as well. So it's completely changing the landscape. As an MNO, we believe that we really have to adapt to the new technology and get ready to deal with it. Yeah.
That was going to be my next question, actually. So you've talked about, Tarek, you and I have talked previously about how that go-to-market model is changing, like supermarkets, all kinds of channels now are selling these services. What kind of positive impact is that having? Is that increasing the awareness that you talked about? Are there any other sort of positive knock-on effects?
Yeah, definitely. We usually it's always known that like 60 to 70% of travelers are silent roamers. They are not using international connectivity, and there is always a trust issue between the customer and the MNOs. They always like I think majority of the MNOs failed to build a trust with the customers because of the bill shocks and the expensive roaming rates. And I think what I see now that the new entrants in the market, they are really playing on this point, right? Everyone is like saying like, hey, get a cheaper connectivity. The MNOs allowed that to happen, right? And that's why the landscape is changing completely now with the eSIM evolution, right? So yeah, so that's how I see it. And I think as MNO, we really have to be ready for that. And for Rakuten, we realized the importance of this like 3 years ago when we started to create our partners and develop our capabilities to deal with the new players in the market. Yeah.
Look, I think I agree with what Scott said too. Partnerships are playing a big part when it comes to the eSIM ecosystem. Fintechs were an early adopter. Let's talk about Revolut, Nubank. But where the market's really moving, let that be ride-hailing services, let that be insurance companies, they're all looking at telecom and eSIM as a value-added service. So as they start to incorporate eSIM in their offering, primarily for roaming as a start, we think it's going to drive awareness as well as more mass market adoption.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think the key thing as well with this new eSIM technology is distribution. So eSIM by itself is effectively just another SIM card, but how do you distribute that eSIM through different mechanisms? So eSIM's opened up the travel SIM market, so you can download an app and get connected, and that's great for an end user, great for a telco as well, like Rakuten, you're creating a product in that space. But it's also great for business as well, because these kind of analog use cases where you needed a physical SIM to travel have gone, and you can create new ways to distribute your product across different technologies. For us, for example, in Microsoft Teams, you couldn't do that a few years ago, and that's what eSIM's enabling, these kind of use cases.
Excellent, thank you. I suppose MNOs have naturally been very conservative and quite protectionist, I suppose, in terms of wanting to conserve those natural roaming revenues. That's something they rely on. Is eSIM technology now starting to change that? Is it starting to chip away at those traditional sources of revenue? And is it a problem for MNOs? And are things changing in that respect?
I guess as a non-MNO, MVNO person, my impression is that the retail roaming revenues will be impacted by these travel apps eventually. But I think the interesting space for MNOs and for global connectivity providers like Telna is, how do you be part of that journey? How do you enable this ecosystem with all these 200 different eSIM apps out there today? How can you guys be part of that picture and provide the APIs, the enabling services, the connectivity to get those apps connected? And I think if you can be part of that journey, then you're going to benefit from it as well. So,
look, we work very closely with the mobile network operators, and we see things a bit differently, right? Like Tarek said, about 60 to 70% of the market was silent roamers. So what eSIM is doing is actually increasing the total addressable market when it comes to roaming, right? If you look at airports, every airport has 3 or 4 shops there selling SIM cards. It's expensive real estate. Now what eSIM's doing is those silent roamers that came to a country, bought a local SIM card, it's disrupting them. And another piece is in a few markets, like if you look at India, you look at USA, prepaid customers did not have access to roaming. So eSIM is actually helping them connect in a more seamless way. So on a longer term basis, as the operators also get more eSIM ready, we think the total addressable market is going to increase.
Yeah, from what I see in the market, and speaking with the MNOs, other MNOs on a daily basis, I think like different groups, like some of the MNOs, they see it as like real threat to their always guaranteed and secure roaming revenues, and some others seeing that as opportunity, right? At Rakuten, we definitely see it as opportunity since very long time, right? Because it opens new markets, right? I never imagined that I would be selling connectivity to anyone rather than my B2C, the customer, my Rakuten customers. But now I'm dealing with enterprises, with other resellers. I open new markets, right? You can find a network or operator from the UK competing with me in Japan selling SIM cards, right? I never imagined that would happen, right? my competitors are always Japanese company in Japan, right? But to see someone from completely different market competing inside Japan, and that's because of the eSIM, this is something new. It's challenging, but we have to get ready for it and be ready to deal with it. And we see that it's really a good opportunity for that. Yeah.
Thank you. You both, all three of you, so far have touched upon the importance of APIs in expanding the network of eSIM players. Let's say. Two questions. I mean, firstly, for the benefit of our audience members who may not be as familiar with the concept of APIs at a very basic level, can you explain exactly what that means, how that changes the model, and what effect that is having on the eSIM market?
I mean, for us as a provider of an eSIM product, having a great API on an operator is really important because the API allows you to create the end-to-end experience. So from the point of desire, that the customer realizes they want to buy a plan, all the way through to provisioning that into the network. It's all done through APIs. And there's different qualities of APIs out there from different operators. Obviously, you guys have got a fantastic API that works all around the world. But the API is critical because it lets you create that digital end-to-end journey. And I think it's really important as a service provider to the eSIM space to be able to have a very strong, accessible API, something that developers can use without going through a huge process to get access to it. It should be available and accessible. But yeah, maybe you can talk on that more, Ayush.
Absolutely. So look, how we look at the eSIM ecosystem, right? Given it's an entirely digital experience, the APIs play a very big part for these service providers to deliver the service experience that they're looking for. All the way from how they provision an eSIM, the packages they create, the ongoing communication so customers know what's being consumed, it really enhances the experience. So we see APIs as a critical part of this ecosystem, especially when you look at partnerships, right? As other applications want to incorporate connectivity, APIs and SDKs are going to be very important. And we're starting to see more use of APIs also towards the enterprise market. Like what Scott and the team are building is how do you take the APIs from the network, incorporate it into applications that makes it easier for the enterprise to consume eSIM roaming?
Yeah, I totally agree with Scott and Ayush. APIs
Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
API, sorry guys. So APIs make our life easier as MNO as well. Especially at Rakuten, we have, Rakuten has 71 companies, right? So different, like it's a huge ecosystem. And having APIs and international connectivity make our life really easier in integrating this international connectivity service with other services that we are offering at Rakuten as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about any regulatory challenges that you might face at the moment at this point in time. Is that something that, again, are regulations being gradually softened that allow this adoption? And I suppose in certain markets, do those regulations make the adoption of eSIMs completely prohibitive? I mean, to what extent is that a problem?
I think front and center for consumer eSIM is KYC. So obviously in some markets there's no KYC. So where we're from in the UK, you don't need KYC to buy a mobile service. You can just literally go and buy one. But if you go to a different country like Germany, you need to go through a KYC process. And I think for these consumer apps to really scale and become super apps we were talking about, you have to solve this KYC problem, and it has to be ubiquitous across all these different countries because each country has a different KYC requirement. I know you guys are leaning into this on your eSIM offering. I was looking this morning, you've got the app with the KYC process that the user can download and go through. And even at the conference, I've seen some great KYC examples throughout the last couple of days. Even a fingerprint scanner, which was the first time I've seen that kind of KYC stuff. So I thought that was great. But maybe, Ayush, on the actual regulation side, what do you guys see? Because you're providing connectivity across the whole world, and to some extent your customers handle the regulation, to some extent you handle it, so it'd be good to hear a bit more about that.
Absolutely. So look, we see regulation playing a bigger part, especially in certain markets like the UAE today, right? The operators, the regulators in these markets really want to know what's happening, who's consuming services. So we see the regulators and markets get a bit more involved. Today, how we describe it internally, it's a bit of the Wild West, right? An eSIM provider from the US is selling in Saudi Arabia. They're not really tracking the duration, but these are aspects that even the mobile networks and regulators are getting more conscious of. KYC will play a big part. And as the eSIM ecosystem is evolving beyond data services to voice, wanting phone numbers in different countries, we think KYC is going to play a big part to actually know who each eSIM is registered to and if they're eligible for one.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. So I think KYC is very important part. We also have some other challenges we see, and I mean, like, the whole thing is new, right? So it's about KYC. We need to regulate it, right? From the KYC perspective, security, make sure that no fraud can happen, and also from the GSMA perspective as well. I see that many MNOs now are in discussions with the GSMA to put new standards and ways to detect the traffic of the eSIM as well. And that happened before with the IoT, the M2M traffic, but at the moment we don't have really anything that can let the operators on MNO detect the eSIM traffic, right? So yeah, so this is something I see some of the operators working on it, and this is the way that they want to make money out of the eSIM. They don't want to build their capabilities, but they want to control it. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but this is how they are doing as well. Yeah.
Tarek, this is a question to you directly, actually. So I suppose we've spoken about this previously again, but why, I suppose from day one, really, Rakuten Mobile's taken a very open, relatively modern and unique approach. Well, not unique, but certainly a very open approach to eSIM technology. Just for the record, I suppose, can you talk about what has been Rakuten Mobile's thinking from day one with regards to eSIM? It's always been a case of we should offer this to consumers, right? And what has been the logic behind that?
Yeah, we saw that this is a great opportunity. Actually, we never see it. We understand that many people are see this as a threat, but for us, we see it like it's a great opportunity, right? It opens new markets, new target customers and segments. So we try to understand what exactly we need to do, right? We started to do our required partnerships, our internal developments. We developed our own capabilities, our own APIs. We put a clear strategy. We are not resisting the evolution because we understand how important in this one, and it happens before in the voice as well, right? When the voice like maybe 20 years or something or 15 years, it happened to the OTTs appeared in the market, and some players, they started to resist the OTT, you know, and they said no, we have to fight this and we have to keep the revenues coming from the voice, and now there is no voice, right? So I think it's going to happen the same with roaming, right? So if any MNOs are not really ready to adapt with the new technology and deal with it, they will be in a very risky position at that time. So that's how we see it. We see that it's going to be a threat, real threat, if we don't at that time wouldn't have started acting quickly to adopt this new technology. Yeah.
I see both of you nodding there. Do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I guess the way I see it is eSIM enables these end-to-end digital journeys, and for operators like you guys, having that digital journey for the end user to be really easy to buy your services in the Japanese market or for travel is super important, because if you don't create a great experience, your competition will. And having that really easy switching experience to move from one operator to the other is going to become a key part, in our view, of how we consume mobile services in the future. So yeah, it's great that you guys are focused on getting that right.
Sorry, that's my bad. So let's talk about, again, I think you kind of touched upon it there, Tarek, is will eSIM technology, or the refusal to adopt it, will it go the same way as voice if MNOs don't adapt, if they don't make decisions now that proactively allow them to adopt it? Will it go the same way as voice? And is that something that's going to really pose a threat to them in that sense?
I think 100% it will happen. 100%. Because imagine if in a country you have like 2 or 3 or 4 operators, if one of them allowed or opened the door for the eSIM and adopted the technology, means the market is disrupted, right? Everybody will go, like all the new entrants will enter the market through this door, only one door. So it's very risky, and I think that really the MNOs has to understand the opportunity, and the eSIM is not a threat. It's gonna be a threat if you're not gonna deal with it, right? If you're not gonna be ready for it, if you're not gonna adopt it. Now, at that time, it's gonna be risk. But if you're adopting the technology, if you're getting ready for it, if you're like coping with the new technology, then it's gonna be great opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what Tarek is saying, because what we are seeing with the mobile network operator ecosystem over the last 2 years, they initially started off a bit apprehensive, with every new technology trend, they don't understand the implications. But what we've seen in the last year is mobile network operators have gotten a lot more open about how can they participate in this ecosystem. Let that be by adopting platforms, technology stacks, and creating the same experience. Because a big disruptor for them, especially when it comes to roaming, is if the primary airlines in their market is leveraging connectivity from a service provider that's not them, it could have a significant impact on their revenues. So it's important, and we are seeing the mobile networks work in the right direction towards it.
Thank you. We are coming towards the end of time. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like to offer? Any wrap-up remarks you'd like to make? Any message perhaps you'd like to send to the audience in terms of your current position on eSIM, and any closing thoughts?
So maybe I can add actually to what Ayush was saying, it's not only a threat, but actually by time, some of the resellers will become bigger and they'll have huge traffic in some countries where the operators are operating, right? And you'll be much more stronger, because in this industry, if you have more traffic, you're more stronger, you're more powerful to make more aggressive deals and offerings. Right? So imagine I'm an MNO in Japan, but there are some other players in Japan, not MNOs, that are much stronger than me because they have much traffic than me. Right? So it's really a huge risk for operators if you're not going to deal with it now. So I'm inviting everyone in the industry to rethink about it and set the strategy, the proper strategy to deal with the eSIM and make use of this new technology because it can be really great opportunity for them.
Just a few points from my side is, look, eSIM is still very early. Right, in terms of the verticals, it's heavily being used by consumers today, but there is a massive opportunity. Let that be the enterprise market, let that be partnerships, and where we really see eSIM roaming evolve is towards eSIM local market services. So, our goal as Telna in this industry is to work very closely with our mobile network operator partners, educate them, as well as help them from a platform and technology standpoint to adopt eSIM and enable the different verticals. So if you are interested in learning more, we're in Hall 7 and happy to walk you through our offering and how we can help.
Yeah, just two very quick closing thoughts. For me, if anyone's thinking about building an eSIM proposition, have a think about how you can go from that kind of world of having a physical SIM that slows down your kind of sales process to a completely end-to-end digital journey. And that's what an eSIM enables. So you can sell in all sorts of different channels. And then the second thought is that we're all kind of moving towards this eSIM world in the future, but it's still quite complicated. And I think as a device manufacturer, an Apple, an Android, and so on, how can they make the install process and the activation process a bit simpler so that even non-technical people can just go, yeah, no worries, I understand how to install that eSIM. It's just as easy as sticking the plastic SIM card in the side of the phone. So they're my two kind of closing thoughts, I guess.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much, Ayush. And thank you, Tarek. Unless there's one final remark you'd like to make, or am I misreading your holding of the mic there? Ladies and gents, a very big thank you to our panelists there, Scott, Ayush, and Tarek, for that discussion on eSIM technology. Great stuff. Thank you very much.